Now, there has been a new sound package that has been added to Bitwig with version 5, and that is the Freeform Sound Package. And what's really important about this package is that it includes the new MSEG devices, the new wavetables, and the wavetable LFO in the presets and instruments that you got included in the sound package. So what's great is to open up some of these presets, explore how they've been built up, and you can see how advanced some of these MSEGs are when they've been incorporated into these instruments and presets. And to get to the Freeform Sound Package, I can just click over here, go to this view where I see everything, and then here is the Freeform Sound Package. And as I click that, it's broken down into Bitwig presets, samples, and wavetables. And you can just go in here and explore, and as you can see, there are many things that have been included. There's about 100 presets included alone just in the Bitwig presets folder of this Freeform package. And the nice thing is that you can use the MSEGs that have been built up in these devices and use them in other instruments. For example, I've got some instruments loaded up here, and I just want to dive into them and just show you what type of instruments these are and how they're using the MSEGs. So first off, this is the Himalayan Dinosaur preset. Take a listen to this. So as you can hear, a very interesting sounding instrument, and that's because it's incorporated many of the MSEGs into its signal chain. So it's using a polygrid instrument over here, and I just want to click here to open up the grid, and as you can see, it is quite complex. A lot of modules have been added and chained together. So as you can see here, you've got your oscillator. This is the union oscillator, which has 3 waveforms that you can assign or use in it. Going into the SVF filter, what you've got as well is a sine oscillator going into this filter, and then if you just scroll down here, these are going into the shaper and the mixer, then into an envelope, to some saturation, you've got a meter, and then audio output. But more importantly, take a look here. You've got you've got 2 segments that are being pushed into some modulators, and then these modulators are modulating quite a selection of parameters. So this is the envelope output going into the envelope input on the modulator, and here you can see all the parameters that are being modulated by just the segments. Now that's quite a bit of parameters. Likewise, if I go to this segments over here, this is the same thing. It's going out of this envelope output into the envelope input of the modulator, and this is also modulating quite a few parameters. And then with this filter is being shaped by this curve over here. So there's quite a lot that's going on. So if I just play this back now, you can see how the modulation is happening with these segments over here, as well as the curve. And that is why it's giving you this complex sound over here. So that's giving you a touch of what's possible with the new MSEGs and how you can incorporate them into your chain. Let's take a look at another instrument. So moving over onto here, this is the Vector Rhythmic Pad. Take a listen to it. Also a nice, very complex sounding pad. It actually sounds quite organic. So let's take a look at the signal chain with this as well. So what we've got here is this polygrid instrument over here with a bunch of parameters that have been assigned to remote controls. And as you can see, it is also using the grid. So if I open up the grid over here, it looks quite expansive. So I'm just going to use my zoom tool to zoom out a bit. Now, the nice thing about this instrument is that it's been labeled quite nicely. Over here, you've got your oscillators. As you can see, you've got oscillator A, oscillator B, oscillator C, and oscillator D. And these are all being blended together with these blend modules over here. You can see there's some LFOs and some modulation over here. Then this is passing into a filter section. You've got some filter modulation, then an amp envelope section, and then the output. And if you take a look through the different sections, there's multiple MSEGs going over here. Here we've got the scroll MSEG that is mapping over to these blend devices over here, the same as the scroll over here. So basically just two scrolls that are being used with different waveforms. If I click on them here, you can see how the pitch is being shaped here as well. The pitch is being shaped. And then over here is another scroll, and that's coming from this oscillator C and D blend over here. And it's also using a different shape. So 4 different scroll MSEGs that are being used to modulate the oscillators. Then if I go across over here, this is the filter section, which is using an ADSR filter as well as a curve shape. And if you take a look at the curves, this is also doing some modulation that's going into the filter sequence. So very, very advanced. What you can get out of here is that you can really backwards engineer the sound of some of these instruments by going into the polygrid and check how modular everything is and how these things have been chained together. So now that you can see the modular grid section, let me play this back again. And you can see all the parameters that are being modulated. So many of these blends are being modulated. You've got the filter modulating, as well as the modulation happening to the amp envelope and the filter over here in the filter mod section. So use these presets as an education to go in and reverse engineer and just see how some of these instruments have been built up together. Now let's take a look at some other ones as well. So I've got 2 more instruments I want to look at. This is the overtone sweep. Take a listen to this. So also another nice, very organic sounding instrument. And as you can see in the end, as that last note played out and tailed off, you still had all this modulation that's happening to the sound. So as you can see, this is using a phase 4 instrument, and instead of using the grid, we're using the modulators or the MSEG modulators within this modulation section over here. And there's numerous MSEGs that are modulating multiple parameters. So you can see using some curve shapes, there's some wavetable LFO modulation, so also you've got your segments, another curve shape over here. This is another segments, and we've got a curve 3 over here and another curve here. So multiple curve shapes and segments that are being used to modulate many parameters in this instrument. So you can see all the modulations that are happening over here, over in the ratios over here, and the filters. So that's just another way of working. As you saw with these 2 instruments, they're using the polygrid and using the grid with MSEG modules, where over here, you're using an instrument with a modulation section and assigning them there. Now, one last instrument, let's take a listen to this. This is called Harper Strings Ensemble. And that is quite a big sound. And that's because what you've got is you've got 2 polygrid instruments that are packed together. And if you click on each one, you can see what has been connected together in the grid view over here with a modular environment. So you've got curves, you've got a wavetable LFO, you've got a scroll. These are going into a comb filter, then into an envelope, into a chorus effect, some attenuation, and the audio output. So that is the one instrument. I could solo this and play it back. As well, I forgot to mention that there's also some effects that's happening. So you've got an EQ and a delay. Now I can jump to the next polygrid instrument that sounds like this. So a lot higher sounding. And as you can see, there's also a collection of MSEGs being used. You've got a curve shape, you've got a scroll. This is going into a filter section. There's also a wavetable LFO, and then this is all going through an envelope, chorus section, and attenuator as well. So as you can see, it's very nice just to explore how these freeform instruments have been chained up and built up. And this will give you some ideas how you can build up your own instruments by using MSEGs and chaining them together in different ways.